Hi, Otters. Today we're going to be doing some more immersion. We are starting a new writing unit and we are shifting from informative writing into argumentative writing. So there are a few things that will help you with this lesson today. One, you should have your mentor text, the paper copy for the argumentative unit that you should have picked up in front of class today. In addition, it'll be helpful if you have some colored pencils or colored highlighters available for marking up your mentor text. And lastly, it'll be really helpful if you have your informative mentor, because you're going to take a moment to pause this video, read quietly through this argumentative mentor, and stop and think about any similarities or differences you notice between the mentor text for this unit on argumentative writing called Getting Paid for Good Grades and the similarities you notice between this one and the mentor text on ecosystems for informative writing. So go ahead and pause the video at this time, take a read through your new mentor text, and take a look at it alongside the previous one. All right, Otters, so one thing you probably noticed about this mentor text is that it starts with an introduction, just like the mentor text on informative writing. So if you would take a moment to label on the left-hand side, put the word introduction next to your introduction. Something else you might have noticed is that this essay in the introduction also starts with a hook. Remember, a hook is a way to grab the reader's attention when you're going to write an essay. The three ways that we've practiced so far are using a fact, a quotation, or vivid imagery. In addition, this introduction has a bridge in the middle sentence. Remember, that is usually the author's way of introducing the reader to the topic that they're going to be writing about that day. And lastly, the introduction ends with a thesis. It's the claim or the opinion, and it should be the roadmap of the essay. So this one is clearly ending with a strong opinion that students should get paid for good grades. We know from the introduction that the purpose of this essay is going to be talking about how to motivate students for good grades and why getting paid for getting good grades is a good idea. And we are going to highlight the colors of this text again. Go ahead and highlight the hook of your introduction yellow, if you have that color available. And we're going to highlight the thesis statement in green. If you need to pause so you can take a moment to do that, go ahead and pause. Great, moving on to the second paragraph of the essay, you might have noticed that this is the first body paragraph. It starts with a transition, just like the informative mentor did. Some of the parts of the body paragraph you're going to want to label and pay attention to. First, notice it starts with a topic sentence, really similar to how the body paragraph started with a topic sentence in informative writing. And remember, the topic sentence should be a specific reason that supports a thesis. Really, again, thinking back to that idea of boxes and bullets. So it's turning a bullet point into a topic sentence. Next, we have another part of the paragraph that should look familiar. We have some evidence. Remember, that should be information from a source to support a topic sentence. I'm going to go ahead and highlight my evidence in blue so that I know that that part stands out on its own. Notice that the evidence is introduced by having the source title and a strong verb to introduce the evidence. Then it's listed in quotation marks, and it has source citation in parentheses at the end over here. The last portion I'm noticing of this body paragraph is the analysis. Again, it's a really similar pattern to the body paragraphs that we saw and practiced in the informative unit. This analysis is really an explanation of the evidence and how it supports the topic sentence and the claim, right? So I'm hearing a phrase like this shows, really explaining how the evidence shows why students should get paid for good grades, and really explaining how the evidence supports the idea that this might improve and increase student motivation. I'm going to highlight my analysis purple so that I might be able to see some patterns between this paragraph and the next body paragraph. If you haven't already, make sure you highlight your topic sentence orange if possible. So again, topic sentence in orange, your evidence all highlighted in blue, and then the analysis in purple. Moving on to the third paragraph of the argumentative mentor, you'll notice it's another body paragraph, which should be another bullet point that supports the claim of this essay that students should get paid for good grades. I'm going to highlight the three parts of this body because I notice that it follows the same pattern as the first body paragraph. I see a topic sentence here. It begins with the transition word additionally. And it sounds like this second bullet point is going to explain the idea that getting paid for good grades is a real world experience that kids can have. And this paragraph should be a way to support that claim and to further continue to support this idea that students should get paid for grades. I see the evidence. I'm going to highlight it in blue. I noticed that this author has mentioned the title the evidence comes from. They use a strong reporting verb to introduce their evidence, and they used a citation at the end to say where it comes from. Then we have the analysis in purple at the very end. Again, this is where we're going to see that there is an explanation of how this quote is supporting this idea that getting paid for good grades is really good practice for an adult life, like actually having a job and working hard for it. This last paragraph of the essay is the conclusion. Again, you might notice some similarities and some differences between the argumentative conclusion and the conclusions that you wrote in informative writing. So make sure you've labeled off to the side the word conclusion so you know that that's what this paragraph is. Remember, in the conclusion, you really want to bring the reader back to what that big idea was that you were writing about. So here, I notice I'm going to highlight in green. There's a reason for that. It is because the author is restating their thesis. They are bringing the reader back to the claim, but in different words. So reminding them about this opinion that students should get paid for their good grades. There's one difference, though, between the conclusion in an argumentative paper and in an informative paper. Since the purpose of an argumentative essay is to persuade someone to a certain opinion or a side of an issue, we kind of want them to think about what would be something important. What do we want them to do now that we've argued that our opinion is really strong? So we want to call this last part, instead of a connection to the world, we call it a call to action. So you can hear how the call to action in this essay is really talking about how students everywhere need to find ways to reward themselves for their good grades. And perhaps, letting the reader know that financial or monetary rewards might be a good way to do that. All right, otters. So at the end of this lesson, your mentor text should look like this one on the left-hand side right here. Again, make sure you've labeled all four of your paragraphs. The introduction, remember this is where you are hooking the reader and introducing them into whatever your claim or your opinion is on this topic. Then you should have two or more body paragraphs that clearly support with evidence reasons why that claim is the best claim or the better claim. And then the last paragraph should be wrapping it all up with the conclusion. I want you to think for a moment looking at this. If you were to imagine how this writer had maybe started this essay as a box and bullets outline, what do you imagine the box would be? And what do you think those bullet points might be? And here's your box and bullets. Probably started out as a box idea. Students should get paid for good grades. with the bullets of increasing motivation and preparing students for real life. Otters, please make sure you take a moment to tape your mentor text into your writer's notebook and label that page immersion. This page will be graded as part of your overall argumentative essay. Thanks for watching.